Nigeria's legal system is this incredible mix. It's got ancient traditions, a hefty dose of colonial history, and of course, modern day lawmaking all rolled into one. So the big question is, where do all these laws actually come from? Let's dive in and unpack it. I mean, really think about it. What's the glue that holds everything together? What stops us all from just descending into total chaos? It's a pretty fundamental question, right? Well, that glue, that framework, that's the law. At its very core, it's just a set of rules that we as a society agree to live by. It's the system that lets us all live and work together without things falling apart. Now, in Nigeria, if you want to find the starting point, the absolute foundation for every single rule, you have to start with the Constitution. Think of it as the nation's ultimate rule book. So, what makes the Constitution the big boss? It's this principle of supremacy. And it's simple. Every other law, whether it's passed by the federal government or a local council, has to line up with what the Constitution says. If it doesn't, it's void, gone. The Constitution always wins. This power really comes from three key things. First, that supremacy we just talked about. It's the highest law in the land. Second, it's a written document, which is huge. It means all the core rules are right there in one place. And third, it has rigidity. That's a fancy way of saying it's deliberately made difficult to change. And that's a good thing. It provides stability and stops the fundamental rules from changing with every political breeze. But listen, this isn't just some abstract document for lawyers. The Constitution is personal. It's what guarantees your most basic rights. Your right to life, your right to dignity, your freedom to speak your mind. All of that is protected right there in its pages. It's basically the ultimate defender of your personal freedom. Okay, so beyond the Constitution, another massive piece of the puzzle comes directly from Nigeria's colonial past. We're talking about the laws that were inherited from England. And this English legacy really comes in two flavors. You've got the common law, which is a very rigid rules system built up over hundreds of years by judges. But sometimes following those strict rules led to really unfair outcomes. So that's where equity steps in. It's a much more flexible system designed to achieve one thing: fairness, especially when the common law was just being too harsh. It's all about getting to a just result. This is where you actually see law being made right inside the courtroom. It happens through a concept with a bit of a tricky name, ratio decidendi. I know, it's a mouthful of Latin. It just means the reason for the decision. When a judge makes a ruling, the core legal reason behind it sets a precedent. That reason effectively becomes a new piece of law that future courts have to follow. But, and this is a really important but, not every single word a judge says turns into law. You have to distinguish it from something called obiter dictum, which means a statement by the way. These are just a judge's side comments, their personal thoughts, or other observations. They might be interesting, maybe even influential, but they are not legally binding. It's the core reason that matters, not the by the way stuff. All right, so we have the Constitution and we have English law. But what about the laws and rules that were here in Nigeria for centuries before any colonial influence? Well, that brings us to our third major source, customary law. These are the rules born straight out of tradition. The amazing thing about customary law is how organic it is. These aren't rules written down by a parliament. They're rules that a specific community has accepted as binding on themselves over generations. In Nigeria, this mostly breaks down into two main types. You have ethnic or indigenous law, which can vary widely from one community to another, and then you have Islamic law, also known as Sharia. Now, a custom doesn't just automatically become official law that the courts will enforce. Nope. It has to pass a kind of quality control check. 3 of them, actually. They're called validity tests. The custom can't be repugnant to natural justice, it can't clash with any written laws, and it can't go against public policy. It's a critical filter. There's a really famous case, Edith versus Essien, that shows this perfectly. There was a custom that said a child's custody belonged to the man who paid the mother's bride price, even if he wasn't the biological father. The court looked at this and said, absolutely not. They struck it down, calling it repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience. It's a powerful example of the modern legal system, ensuring that tradition also aligns with basic fairness. So that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. This is the most direct and modern way that laws are made today. This is the law in action. And we're talking about legislation. It's actually pretty straightforward. These are just the laws that are formally passed by our elected representatives. When the National Assembly in Abuja passes a law, it's called an act. When a State House of Assembly passes one, it's called a law. Simple as that.
This is the engine of our democracy, creating and updating the rules we all live by.
So, how do we get our heads around all these different sources? Well, I find it helps to picture Nigeria's legal system as a massive tree. The Constitution, that's the strong, sturdy trunk that everything else depends on. Then you have these huge branches growing out of it. There's the branch of English law, the deep, ancient roots of customary law, and the new shoots of modern legislation. And the courts? They're like the gardeners, constantly interpreting and shaping these branches to keep the whole tree healthy and balanced. When you step back and look at it, Nigeria's legal system is this incredible, complex tapestry woven from history, culture, and modern needs. And that leaves us with a really big question to think about. In a country with so many different legal roots, how do we best tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow? Which part of this amazing legal tree holds the key to the future?